Byron was all too human, and when he reached the shores of this mountain lake, he would form another complex web of creative and sexual relationships that would fire the world of literature and bring scandalized accusations of a league of incest. Never one to do anything by halves, Byron rented the impressive Villa Diodati perched over Lake Geneva. Staying nearby that spring was another poet, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and his wife Mary. The Shelleys had a reputation for indulging in free love. Their endless presence up at the villa turned his new home into a mecca for Byron groupies and thrill seekers.
Really where he came to get away.
Byron scholar Corinne Throsbury has made a meticulous study of Byron's fan mail.
This was a place that Byron came to escape, but in fact, I don't know quite where it was, but the Hotel Angleterre, I guess, was over there, and that's where they rented binoculars to English tourists so that they could spy on what was going on here in Villa Diodati.
He came here very much to kind of escape that and to really concentrate on his work. You know, he had no choice but to leave London at that time.
And it followed.
And yet it followed in this figure of Claire, and I think she was a woman who knew what she wanted, and she wanted Byron.
One of Byron's most persistent groupies, Claire Claremont, who was a bit of a bunny boiler, joined him with the Shelleys at Villa Diodati. Byron had received a stream of florid correspondence from Claire since his heyday in London. The fact that Claire had already had an affair with Shelley and that she was Mary's stepsister added extra heat to an already spicy mix.
Her letter's actually really similar to the hundreds of other letters that he received, although significantly bolder, as you'll see. You know, she really kind of pushes for a meeting in a way that the other fans don't quite so much. She writes, "An utter stranger takes the liberty of addressing you. It is earnestly requested that for one moment you pardon the intrusion, and laying aside every remembrance of who and what you are, listen with a friendly ear. It is not charity I demand, for of that I stand in no need. If you feel your indignation rising,
let me look at
if
that.
you feel
Where is it? Oh.
If a woman whose reputation has yet remained unstained, if without either guardian or husband to control, she should throw herself upon your mercy, if with a beating heart she should confess the love she has borne you many years, could you betray her? Do not decide hastily, and yet I must entreat your answer without delay."
God, she is very, very pushy.
They felt they had some kind of connection to him, and that his
That's the
poetry...
extraordinary thing. They felt they had a connection. People read these poems just like you buy, you know, a U2 album, and you feel this connection with the writer. That it's a sexual, emotional connection. That you're the woman for them, and then we get people like Claire Claremont arriving on the scene.
With all the possibilities posed by this kinky little foursome, it's a wonder they had time for anything but shagging. But ideas and stories exploded within the walls of this villa like the most multiple of orgasms. Byron encouraged the others to dream and write ghost stories, leading Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein, and even Byron's personal physician wrote the influential novel The Vampire. And for Byron, the idea of poetry as an important force for change was reignited by Shelley.
Do you think he was in love with Byron?
I think that is going a little bit too far, but they definitely had the biggest friendship crush on each other. I mean, it's interesting that it was like this.
Do you think they had orgies together, like people said?
I don't think so. I mean, Byron denies it. They all, you know, the thing that I love with Byron's denial of it is that he says it wasn't a league of incest. They weren't actually sisters. They were stepsisters.
Oh, right.
So he doesn't actually really get to the point.
Many may have been titillated by the idea of a league of incest up at the villa, put about by one of Byron's enemies, but I think others must have just envied them. They lived outside the law, outside the rules of a strict society.
OK, now we're going to pretend that there were English tourists in 1816 staying at the Hotel Angleterre over there.
OK.
The proprietor's given us a pair of binoculars to look over there at Villa Diodati.
To try and see some shagging.
See if there's some group shagging going on.
Excellent.
So we look at... Hang on.
Oh, great Scott!
Marigold, don't look! Byron is shagging Shelley, Mary is licking Claire, Oh, what? No, couldn't be. Have a look, my dear.
Oh, well. What can
Sorry, what? Let me have it.
I can't help but feel that with...
I can't help but feel either, darling.
With 19th century binoculars.
You couldn't have seen very much.
Couldn't have seen very much.
Well, it must have been really fun if you were an English tourist, seeing if you could get a glimpse of it.
What all the scandal hunters didn't know was that Claire Clairmont was carrying what Byron called my little illegitimate. But this apparently shameful fact didn't seem to worry the free-loving circle of the Shelleys.
It was an enchanted summer. And I think Shelley's friendship had a soothing effect on Byron. He changed, deepened, as they spent their days exploring and boating, visiting places like this, the Chateau de Chillon.
The prospect of Byron ever returning to England from exile was slight. Perhaps for this reason he became obsessed with the story of one man who had been held here as a prisoner, the libertarian Francois Bonnivard.
A man who was holed up in a dungeon for 3 years. This absolutely tickled Byron's sense of himself. Byron was always the centre of any drama, even if it was a drama about someone else.
In one version of the 16th century story, Bonnivard and his two brothers are chained together to the walls of the dungeon. Both Shelley and Byron really got off on the grimy details of these stories.
These pillars, you still see the rings.
The castle's curator, Mercedes Guillaume, is showing me the very spot that inspired Byron's popular poem, The Prisoner of Chillon.
He turns the story of Bonnivard into really a story about himself and Shelley, kind of strapped to leg irons, both of them lashed to a wall, being beaten and whipped and everything like that. And it's almost homoerotic, I find, the whole thing. But, you know, that's just me. Where's their signatures? Where is Shelley's?
Just here.
There it is, look.
You miss the S.
There's the S, just, you can see it. Where's Byron?
On this pillar you can read his name. Actually, in the prison you read it several times. So most probably it is one of his admirers. Many English young ladies came with a book open in their hands to walk around the pillars, reading the poem as the prisoner did.
Really? Wow. Here we have Lord Byron's kind of acid trip Broadway musical version of the incarceration of the 16th century freedom fighter, Francois Bonnivard. My hair is grey, but not with years, nor grew it white in a single night, as men's have grown from sudden fears. At last, men came to set me free. I asked not why, and recked not where. It was at length the same to me, fettered or fetterless to be. I learned to love despair. With spiders I had friendship made, and watched them in their sullen trade. Had seen the mice by moonlight play. And why should I feel less than they? My very chains and I grew friends. So much a long communion tends to make us what we are. Even I regained my freedom with a sigh.
With the pregnant Claire Clairmont and the Shelleys returning to England, Byron was once again a free agent. And he was soon to discover that too much freedom can be dangerous. Byron was now headed to a country where the attitudes to life, literature and love were so very different from the constraints of English morality and Swiss seclusion, and plunged right into Milan's high society. Byron's beloved Napoleon was in exile and Italy was in flux. Milan was now under Austrian rule, filled with spies, intrigue and revolutionaries. Byron soaked up the febrile atmosphere.
All the world's a stage. And Byron's life was an opera set upon it.
As soon as he arrived, he took a box at La Scala, where everyone went to see and be seen.